Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to make some cookies. This is a recipe that I've been using for a while. It's from a website or a blog called What's Gabi Cooking, and it's the best ever chocolate chip cookies, and they're really quite good. They do have to sit for a while in the fridge. I think it's 72 hours, so I'm going to make them today, and then in a couple days when I bake them, I can show you that step, but I think everybody knows how to bake cookies. I went to the store to get ingredients because I didn't have enough bread flour. And when I got there, guess what? All the bread flour is sold out. I don't know why. Is everyone taking up bread making? Like, bread flour is always at the store. Anyways, no big deal. I'm just going to use all-purpose flour instead. And we'll see how that changes the cookies. Bread flour has a little bit more of a protein to it, which makes like the texture different, and a little bit more glutinous than an all-purpose flour would be. We're mixing it with cake flour, so that we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to try it and we'll see what happens. There are some specific steps you need to follow in making cookies, so I want to show you those. I have to weigh out my ingredients, which I realize is not the best recipe to show you because I should show you how to measure properly, but you can see how to weigh ingredients properly this way. So I have to weigh most of them, and then I'll get started on the cookies. So let me show you what the ingredients are. Okay, so here is all-purpose flour. Like I said, the recipe calls for bread flour, but they didn't have any at the store, and I'm all out of mine. Some salt. This is my homemade vanilla that I make with vanilla beans. The sugar that we're going to put in, some baking soda, some baking powder. I need 10 ounces of butter, I think. So I'm going to have to use 2 1/2 sticks. And then the chocolate chips I'm going to use, this is a brand that I really like. I have semi-sweet and milk chocolate. It's one bag is what the recipe calls for. I might do part milk and part semi-sweet. We'll see how I feel about that. Some eggs. There's my cake flour. Cake flour is a little bit lighter of a flour. There's not as much of a gluten, the gluten protein in it, so it's a little bit lighter and fluffier. We'll see how it mixes with the all-purpose flour. Like I said before, it's supposed to be with bread flour, but we'll see how that turns out. And then I have some brown sugar, which is going to go in there. And then this is, I think I showed you the baking powder already. This is fleur de sel. It comes from France. It's just a salt that is hand harvested from the sea. I don't know, I've had it forever. I put it on caramels when I make caramels at Christmas time. But this I sprinkle on the cookies before I bake them, and the salt on the chocolate chip cookie is like takes the flavor to a whole new level. So those are the ingredients I'll be using, and let me show you how I measure. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I measure. Look at, there's Fig right there chewing on a bone. I'll show you a couple of the things that I'm going to measure, and then I'll probably like time lapse through a bunch of it because it's going to get boring. So to start out, I'm going to start with my flours. I'm going to do the cake flour and the bread flour. I need 8 1/2 ounces of each of those. So I have a kitchen scale. I'm turning it on. I'm letting it come to 0. I need it in ounces, so I'm going to tare it. I'm sorry. I'm going to hit the mode button to get it to ounces. And then I'm going to put the bowl on. And I'm going to hit tare, and that will reset the scale to 0. So it's not counting the weight of the bowl right now. Come on. There, now it's at 0. So then I'm going to start with my all-purpose flour. It's supposed to be bread flour. I've said that 4 times now. And I need 8.5 ounces, so that's going to be a decent amount of flour. And I am just scooping it in until I get to 8.5. I don't want to ever pack down flour. You don't want to tap the, like if you're putting it in a measuring cup, you don't want to tap the measuring cup or condense it in any way. So I'm at 7.9, so I'm just going to do a little bit more. 8.2. 8.3. 8.4. This is riveting. 8.5. There we go. So that's my first flour. I'm going to do the other flour the same way. Sugar and brown sugar as well have to be weighed. What I'm going to do before I do that, though, is in this bowl, I'm going to get my other ingredients. So I need baking powder and salt. I need 1.5 teaspoons. So I just want to show you a couple things. So this is my baking powder. Baking powder is very different from baking soda. So when the recipe calls for 1, you have to use whatever it's asking you to use. Long story short, baking powder rises twice, once when heated and once when added to liquid, and baking soda only rises once, or releases the gas once when it is added with liquid. So on the baking powder container, I should do this the other way so you can see, there is a flat side, and most of them will have this, and so that is for, you put your measuring spoon in, and then you slide it along the top there, and you're gonna get the right amount. There's a chunk in there, that's why I have to do it again. And then you get a nice flat level teaspoonful. So I need 1.5 teaspoons, so I'm gonna put 1 in there and then the half. Now baking soda, baking powder, and salt are all gonna go in at the same time, or gonna go in with your dry ingredients. And so I'm just gonna put them all in the same bowl so that I save on dishes. So I need 1.5 of salt as well. This is just so again, the salt container has the straight edge on there, and then you just slide it right across. 1.5. And then the baking soda, I need 1.25. So baking soda, the box, if you open it properly, has the straight piece of cardboard there for you to do the same thing. So we're sliding and sweeping it across the top. There's 1, and then I'm going to do 1/4. Alright, so that's my baking soda, my salt, and my baking powder all in one bowl. And then the rest I will measure out on a time lapse so you don't have to watch this whole process or listen to me talk, because I'll probably start singing along with the music, and nobody needs me to make a singing video. All right? Okay, so the first step is to mix together the dry ingredients. So that's the 2 flours, the baking soda, baking powder, and salt, and we're going to mix it well to combine. So I'm going to put those 3 things into one bowl, making sure I get it all out. This is not the best bowl for this situation, but I'll make it work. So I'm going to put those in there. Okay, so I mixed those 3 together, or those dry ingredients together, and then I'm just going to combine them. You kind of, really, the goal is to get the baking soda and baking powder kind of divided up in there so it's all equally mixed. So, like I said, not an ideal bowl, but it's good enough. So, I spilled a little, big deal. There we go. Okay, the second step of the recipe then, once we've set aside the dry ingredients, is to combine in your mixer the butter and the sugars. It calls for 10 ounces of butter, so I have 2 4-ounce sticks, that's 8 ounces total. Can you see that? And then I cut off, oh, I didn't do that right. I need more butter. I only cut off an additional ounce, so that would only give me 9 ounces. So I need 2.5 sticks of butter. So I'll just add this one to it. There. So now that's enough butter. 4 ounces, 8 ounces, 9, 10 ounces. So we're going to mix that for 5 minutes in the stand mixer, the 2 sugars and the butter. You want to add a bunch of air to this. This step is what we call creaming. So when you cream together the butter and sugar, you want it to all come together and be a nice creamy mixture. You should be able to smell the sweetness of the sugar, and you want to add a little bit of air to that. After that 5 minutes, then we're going to do the eggs one at a time. And I'll just carefully add those in one at a time. And it tells you to scrape down the edges in between. So I'll lower the bowl and I will scrape all the sides, and then I'll do the next one. And then the last thing you're going to do in the mixer is add that vanilla. And I don't pre-measure that out. I'll just measure it when I need to. So I'm going to get my mixer out. We'll set it all up, and I will do that next step. Okay, so that was the second step of the recipe. So first step was to mix your dry ingredients together and set them aside. Second step, we creamed together the butter and the sugars for 5 minutes. Then we added 2 eggs, one at a time, scraping down the sides in between. And then I added the 3 teaspoons of vanilla. Man, I hope it was 3 teaspoons. Yes, it was. So this is what the dough looks like now. It's light and airy. The sugars are broken down, so it's not going to be granulated or crunchy. And now we're ready to move on to our next step, which is going to be to add the dry ingredients. I'm going to add as many as I can using the mixer, but at some point the mixer can't do it all, and I'm going to have to stop and stir it in by hand. So the point of this video is to show you the order of operation when making cookies. And it's always, always, always to start with your sugar and butter first, and then your eggs. My dad has told me since I was a little girl that his mom always told him, so my grandma, always told them that butter and sugar first for cookies. And I will even, if I see a recipe that doesn't call just for butter and sugar first, it might have you add the eggs in right away as well. I just do my butter and sugar first. I follow my grandma's rule and do those 2 first, and then I always add the eggs third. So that's my little tip for making cookies. If you poured all the dry ingredients in the bowl and then threw everything in and just turned it on hoping it would turn out, you would get a real sandy product, and it won't come together and actually be the cookie dough that you want. So like I said, from here, my next step is going to be to add the dry ingredients. I'll do a little bit with the mixer, and then after that, I will do the rest by hand, because at some point you just can't have the mixer do everything. And if you do have a mixer like this and you can get it to do all the flour, I don't recommend you doing the chocolate chips with the mixer, because that will break up your chocolate chips into little bitty bits, and that's not the idea of a chocolate chip. So I'm going to follow the rest of the recipe. I'll add the dry ingredients. I'll put the chocolate chips in. I'll do that all by hand. And then we will stop for now. They do have to sit for 72 hours, like I said. So today's Monday, so 24 would be Tuesday, 48 would be Wednesday, and 72 would be Thursday. So on Thursday, I will get them out of the fridge and bake them. So that's my little cookie tutorial for now. Stay tuned for the rest of the steps on a time lapse, and we'll go from there.